Hey guys, today I want to bring y'all my Poison Spiral Volley Deadeye. Now, the best thing about this character is that it is a jack of all trades in the sense that it does mapping really well, but it also bosses extremely fast and efficiently as well. It doesn't one-shot the bosses, but it pretty much kills bosses so fast, it's basically like a one-shot. So it's an extremely efficient build, and not only is it efficient in terms of the performance, it is also efficient in terms of the cost, because even though we are using a bow, which is highly sought after because a lot of people are using light arrow, we don't go crit at all, and we don't care about additional projectiles at all, which means that we are not fighting the lightning arrow guys for their equipment. So everything is just pretty efficient in terms of the damage dealing capabilities and also the cost of this character. Now, if you're a longtime watcher of this channel, you might have noticed that this is very similar to a build that I made last league, which was the Poison Spiral Volley Deadeye. But the big problem with that was that the single target was very much lacking because we only had snipe to use. But this league with Pathfinder, we can use Acidic Concoction to help us with our single damage, and it does a ton of single damage. With a caveat of that, we are probably using a bugged interaction to do this, so potentially it might get fixed, but we have had 3 relatively large patches that addressed a lot of bugs, and they have not patched this out yet. So I think we are safe from getting patched out or fixed this patch, like this entire league, and more likely than not, it'll start getting fixed next league as opposed to this one. But even if it does get fixed this league, we do have other options for a single target, which are still very strong, but definitely nowhere near as strong as the Acidic Concoction bugged interaction is. But with that, let's go into our character. So this is my level 92 Pathfinder Concoction. It is currently at 1.6k life and 3k energy shield. So relatively okay survivability right now, nothing crazy. We also have 54% evasion. For our resistances, we are not resist capped right now. We are missing a little bit of cold resist, but that's because I am planning to change my gear very soon and upgrade it. So that's why it's not capped right now. Later on, it will be, but I did want to make this video because a lot of people were asking for this build, and I wanted to just get this out before we do that. I'll probably send an update, make an update video in the future with the upgraded gear. But yeah, that is why we have our resistance in its current state right now. But before we go into anything else, I want to talk about the Acidic Concoction interaction. So Acidic Concoction, what it does is it consumes your mana flask charges to throw a flask that explodes for physical damage, but the flask also consumes poison on hits to cause an acidic burst. Now, what is acidic burst? Well, acidic burst causes enemies to lose life equal to 150% of the expected remaining damage of the consumed poison. So basically, let's say we shoot this poison burst arrow at the enemy right here, which is this pillar. It's going to start ticking down, right? Well, we go throw Acidic Concoction at it, and boom, it'll instantly do that damage in a burst. So that is what Acidic Concoction does. But the reason why there's a bugged interaction is because when you throw Vine Arrow on the ground, you can see it's a normal plant right now. But if we burst some poison onto it, it gets afflicted with poison, basically storing the poison damage that we did to it. Normally, it just latches onto the boss and does damage over time. But again, if you remember correctly, Acidic Concoction consumes poison to do all the damage at once. But there is a bug right now to where if you throw the Acidic Concoction at the plants, it will do the full damage, but not consume the poisons. So that is the current bugged interaction right now. Though I would expect in the future, if they do fix it, you might still be able to use it with Gas Arrow and still do kind of the same thing. So there's some potential where it could still stay after like the quick potential bug fix. But yeah, that's basically how it works. Now, the thing is, right? Every single flask will consume the poison or deal that consumed poison damage. So if we use Nova, we are throwing 5 flasks, and if we throw it next to our feet, it'll all overlap, aka we will be able to do the damage from these flowers, aka the damage from the poison burst arrow, 5 times when we overlap it. And because there's 2 flowers, that means that is getting multiplied by 2, and that's 10 times. So we can consider every single time we throw our acidic flask on these as though we are shooting the boss or the enemy with 10 poison burst arrows that just deal that damage instantly. And that's why we do so much damage, because we just spam this like this and we're doing 10, 10, 10, 10. It's just a lot of damage burst at once, which is why we're able to deal such high amount of single target damage. So I will go into a little bit later about how this looks like in the boss, because there is a lot of miscommunication or misconceptions about how to actually deal damage with this, but I'll save that for later in the video. Next up, we'll go over Spiral Volley. Now, Spiral Volley is a really cool ability. It shoots arrows in a circle around you, and it has a line on it that says it chains to enemies and other targets when you consume frenzy charges. So all your arrows will start chaining on one another, and also every single frenzy charge you consume will, well, first of all, if you consume a frenzy charge, it'll do 100% more damage, and for every frenzy charge you consume, it'll do an additional 30% more damage. So this ability does a lot of damage just by consuming frenzy charges. And that is kind of why this ability is so strong and really doesn't require that much gear, because most of your damage really just comes from the ability itself rather than your gear. So as long as you're consuming frenzy charges, you are doing a lot of damage. Now, how do we get these frenzy charges? So we use armor break. So corrosion to break the armor, right? We poison the enemy. We run poison support to give our Spiral Volley a chance to poison, 60% chance. Then that poison will break the armor of the enemy we're hitting. Then when the armor gets broken, then we use the armor break support gem to make it so that we have a 20% chance to gain endurance charges when we fully break armor. This used to be 100% last league, so unfortunately it did get a little bit nerfed, but it still works relatively well. Now, the thing is, again, because it got nerfed, if you are used to Spiral Volley from last league, it is quite a bit less consistent. And as a result, we actually do need to focus a little bit of our gearing and damage to deal damage without the frenzy charges. But it's totally fine. We've taken care of it. Now, that is how you do the frenzy charge generation, and that is why Spiral Volley is so strong. Now, let's go over all of the gems, right? So again, Spiral Volley, we've gone over these ones, but we also run Defy. The reason why we run Defy is because Surround and the Constricting Command Helmet is extremely busted. So we are running the Constricting Command Helmet, which means we can run Defy because we are always surrounded, and that allows our damage to be lucky, which basically means we have a range of damage on our abilities, right? 2k to 6.8k. We can roll the dice twice, basically. So every time we hit an enemy, we roll a dice to see what the value comes out to be between this number. So if we roll it twice, that means we can take the higher number, and that is the number that we end up doing in terms of our damage. That's why it's so strong. And the other thing is, if we don't have enough mana, it doesn't matter, because mana doesn't prevent us from using the skills. So it's just super, super strong, and that's why we're using Defy and the Constricting Command Cap. And then we also are using Bursting Plague because this helps us a lot with our AoE, especially when we don't have our frenzy charges. So those are the gems we're using for this. For Acidic Concoction, we are using, again, Nova Projectiles, allows us to do the shotgun of effect of our concoctions. We are using Magnified Area because that increases our likelihood and our ease of shotgunning, right? We are using Rapid Attacks 3. The thing is, again, our Acidic Concoction consumes poison on hit. So the Acidic Concoction is not actually dealing the damage. This is the part of the damage that it's dealing, which is very small. The big damage comes from the consume, which is coming from our Poison Burst Arrow. So it doesn't matter if we reduce the damage dealt here, because we're just consuming the poison dealt by Poison Burst Arrow. So we're running Rapid Attacks 3 to get this out faster, right? To attack faster. And then we are also running Culling Strike, because Culling Strike will allow us to basically go and cull enemies because we are still hitting them. And then we have Projectile Acceleration just to make it so that the projectiles hit the ground a little bit faster, aka potentially a little bit more damage. There's really not much out there that is going to like buff Acidic Concoction because it's not actually doing damage itself. But with that, we just have, you know, all of these for utility as a result. For our Poison Burst Arrow, we are again using Defy. Again, we are using Surround Helmet. You can feel free to use Close Combat as well, because Close Combat will actually increase the amount of damage that you deal with Poison Burst for the single target. I just found that it's just a little bit better for me to use Defy. That way I can even use Poison Burst Arrow during mapping a little bit more efficiently, because I don't have to worry about mana again. And also, we are rolling a fairly large range of damage. So if we are just using close combat, what that means is we might roll a small number for even, for the little vine that we're hitting. So that ends up being lower damage as well. That's why I run Defy still. You can feel free to run close combat if you want the ceiling to be higher, because this doesn't improve the ceiling. It just makes it more consistent. We're also running Deadly Poisons to deal more poison damage, concentrated area, more damage, prolonged duration, because duration does matter. The more duration you have, the more damage that vine arrow itself is going to do. And then again, more that we're going to go be able to burst onto the boss of the Acidic Concoction. And we're also running Rigwald's Ferocity. This makes it so that when our weapon is in weapon set 2, it deals 30% more damage, which is why we have our weapon in weapon set 2 as opposed to weapon set 1. Basically, Poison Burst Arrow, again, you're just going to want to maximize the amount of damage and duration on your poisons for this. We are also running, let me swap these, Vine Arrow, of course. That is another big part of our combo. You can use this while mapping as well. Just throw it down next to an enemy and shoot it with a Poison Burst Arrow. That will cause it to burst as well and get poisoned. But for this, we are running Prolonged Duration to make these last longer on the ground. We are also running Magnified Area, so if we're mapping, the enemy gets basically grabbed from a larger range. We're also running Overabundance, because again, if we do 2 of them on the ground, that's 2x damage for our Acidic Concoctions. We're also getting Slow Potency to slow enemies are attached to it, and then Rapid Attacks to allow us to shoot these down faster. So that's Vine Arrow. And then Toxic Growth. I don't really use this that much anymore, to be honest. I was mostly using this during early game and early mapping when I was using Gas Arrow, but I have like empty skill slots, so I just kind of kept this on here. You don't have to use this if you don't want to, but Concentrated Area, Exploit Weakness to grab the armor breaks. Then we have Defy again and Long Fuse. So Long Fuse doesn't affect detonation time because the Toxic Growths get manually detonated when you put poisons onto them. So they just get instantly detonated, which means this is just basically free 35% more damage. We also run Despair, but this is not really useful because we're not actually hitting the enemies with poison like the boss. Again, the damage is because we are hitting the Vine Arrow with poisons on it. The boss itself doesn't actually have poison on them, or it'll run out at some point. So this is why Despair is not very useful for bossing. Mostly I use this when I have an Abyss and it opens up on the ground. I toss this with Cursed Ground support. That way all the enemies are taking more poison damage or chaos damage from my Spiral Volley, basically. So this is not for bossing. This is for AoE, for mapping. Heightened Curse is on here, Cursed Ground, Magnified Area, and Prolonged Duration. For our support gems, you might be wondering why I run Herald of Plague. Well, first reason is because there's not really that much else I'd use on here. Withering Presence is not very useful because, again, same reason why Despair is not useful. Withering Presence is not useful for bossing. You could potentially run something like Berserk and do like a Rage setup. That also works, but that's a lot of work for me. I'm a little bit lazy for that. You can feel free to do that if you want. But I run Herald of Plague here because it increases. So right here it says it has a 1.8 meter radius, whereas for Pathfinder 1, Contagious Contamination, this is a 1.5 meter radius. So I just don't find this as good as Herald of Plague. You can feel free to grab, like, not use Herald of Plague if you are using this, but I just couldn't really find anything else I really want to use in here. So I just use Herald of Plague for that, and also the chance to hinder. Wind Dancer and Ghost Dance, very, very standard. Wind Dancer, we are using poison on here. That way when enemies hit us, we have a chance to poison them and spread poisons to kill a lot of enemies around us. Then we are using Pin, Maim, and also Blind Support. And for Ghost Dance, we are using Compressed Duration. That way we are able to go and make sure that the charges, these Ghost Shrouds, are coming back faster. So yeah, that's it for our gems. We have an empty slot here floating. Maybe at some point I might get a little bit more spirit for my chest armor, who knows. But we're going to give up on some survivability on that. So we'll see what we end up doing. But for now, we are not with our full skill slots for our character. Let me know down in the comments if you have any like suggestions for skills I should run. But yeah, that's about it. Next up is the tree. We talked about this a little bit already. I'm not using contagious contamination. I'm also not using overwhelming toxicity because this reduces the duration of our poison by 35%. Like it makes it 35% less, which is huge. Less is multiplicative. So you don't want that because for our vine arrows, you can only get 1 stack of poison onto it anyways. So it doesn't matter how many stacks you are able to get. The 35% less duration is just such a big hit to our damage. You never want to take it with this build. Now, granted, I am still taking some nodes over here for +1s with reduced duration, but that's because the charge generation for our our Spiral Volley is not that consistent compared to last league. So we still will need to be doing some poison damage and good poison damage to carry our mapping, which is why we still do care about the pluses to our poison. But again, this is reduced as opposed to this, which is less. So that's why we still run it, but not on here. Instead, what we do is, of course, we grab Acidic Concoction. This is going to be the first one that you're going to grab to increase the amount of single target you're able to deal. If you're still able to do good single target, which early on it's not that hard using Toxic Growth, you can feel free to go into Contagious Contamination and Overwhelming Toxicity. During the campaign, Overwhelming Toxicity is very useful if you're using a poison build. But in the end game, it is not useful at all, so you can go out of it the moment you start deciding you want to use Acidic Concoction. We also are using Relentless Pursuit because Temporal Chains and Chilled Ground are really annoying. So this is absolutely amazing to use. It's very nice. We are also using Traveler's Wisdom because we are traveling pretty far for our Constricting Command with the surround nodes. So this is very, very nice QOL for that and allows us to get a lot more power because of it. And then our last node, we are using Dousing Vial. Now, you can either go this or Enduring Elixirs. Either one works. For me, I'm just playing with Dousing Vial because we don't really have like a good way to restore our energy shield. And if there is like ignites and stuff on the ground, it does affect our survivability by a good bit. So that's why I use Dousing Vial. Now, you can be immune to freeze, but in my opinion, you are just able to support not getting frozen by using Thawing Charm. This doesn't really, like, it doesn't matter. I'd much rather have the ignite immunity rather than the freeze immunity there. So that's why I'm using the Dousing Vial for that. But that is it for the Ascendancy nodes. Now for a tree, there is quite a bit going on, so I'm going to go over each of them individually. First things first, we are running Resonance because we want to be able to convert our endurance charges that we get from our Spiral Volley into frenzy charges. So that's why we run Resonance there. Next, we have a couple of unique jewels. So first off, we have a Controlled Metamorphosis Diamond, medium to large ring. This allows us to get these 3 nodes without traveling to them. So it saves us a lot of nodes just by doing this. I tried to get as low elemental resistance reduction as possible. So this ended up being about 2 div, but if you want to spend less, you definitely can, but you'll definitely have to eat the elemental resistances as a result. We also only have 1 frenzy charge node over here, as opposed to these ones over here and this one. It's because at the end of the day, again, our frenzy charge generation is a lot less consistent than it was before. I'd say, you're probably going to be going around like 30% of the time without frenzy charges. So you're not going to be able to get to max frenzy charges, 7 frenzy charges that often anyways. So I just figured that the power level that we get from going to 7 is just not worth the points, right? You need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to get to this one, and 1, 2, 3, 4. So I just found it to be not very effective, and as a result, I just took out of it. If you want to get more damage off of your frenzy charges for your Spiral Volley, feel free to do so, but for me, I just found it less useful. We're also not using Subterfuge Mask because we are using Constricting Command, and that is full evasion. So if you're not using Constricting Command, feel free to use that. And then for the rest of it, again, Poison Magnitude, Poison Duration, and also +1 poisons are useful as well because we are relying on our poisons to deal damage. We also have a From Nothing over here that'll give us this one right here for Oasis. That way we can grab these fast acting toxins, faster ailment damage, because this will help us out with our map clear. It doesn't really help us too much with our single target, but for our map clear, it helps quite a bit. So that's why I grabbed them. Again, constricting command nodes. We have these over here. We don't take all of them because some of them give us armor and regen. We just don't need that. Now, for our gems themselves, though, or our jewels, sorry, we are going to be grabbing these jewels right here that give us magnitude of ailments, and ailments deal damage faster. So magnitude of ailments is going to be the more important one and the one you want to prioritize, because this is useful on both mapping and bossing. Because the more magnitude of ailments you have, the more damage that your flowers are going to do, your vines are going to do, and that's going to be more damage your concoctions are going to do. So you're going to want to prioritize number one as magnitude of ailments. Now, damaging ailments deal damage faster is also good because of the fact that it helps us with AoE and map clear. And then, of course, energy shield is going to be great for survivability as well. You're going to want sapphires for this, but you can also get emeralds, which are typically cheaper. I also have a couple emeralds on here because they're fairly interchangeable. So again, damaging ailments deal % faster, and magnitude of poison. They basically do the same thing. So it just depends on what is in the market and what the price is. The only difference is that emeralds get evasion and these give energy shield. And energy shield in general is the better form of mitigation. So that's why I would prefer sapphires. But if you're on a budget, right, the emeralds are just fine. Evasion's a little bit worse, but hey, you know, you got to do what you got to do to get the items, right? So yeah, that is going to be the tree. You're going to want these jewels everywhere, and you have a lot of jewel slots. Like you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 jewel slots. It's quite a bit, which is nice. It gives us a lot of damage. But other than that, we're just going to go around and grab these evasion energy shield nodes. So yeah, that at the end of the day is the tree. Now for our equipment, this is a little bit complicated, but I will just go over what I have first, and then we will go over the swaps. Or swaps, you don't have to swap anything, but this is just like stuff that I've transitioned out of or potentially you could use, because there's a lot of options for this build. So first off, again, we're using Constricting Command. You need the 5 fewer enemies 100% to use this. If not, you can use an Energy Shield Evasion Helmet and use Subterfuge Mask for survivability. This gives us a lot of damage, so I just like it for that. If you find you're a little bit too squishy, feel free to spec out of this and just use Subterfuge Mask with an Energy Shield Evasion Helmet. Now, we are also using Kadiro's Gambit. Kadiro's Gambit is actually better than any other quiver for mapping. You will get a lot of value off of the forks from this, and also rarity. This is going to be the best quiver for mapping. Now, for single target, you can have a swap for another quiver, but personally, I'm doing enough damage to not need that at all, so I just use Kadiro's all the time. If you feel like you're lacking damage, feel free to use this for single target and swap this in for damage during mapping. And that's also why we don't use this node right here, Feathered Fletching, and we don't have any quiver nodes, because Kadiro does not benefit off of either of those. So yeah, that's why we have that situation there. We are also using Serpent's Egg because we are playing Pathfinder. If you were playing Deadeye, you wouldn't need this. But I found that I just don't generate enough charges at a consistent enough rate, and Serpent Egg helps out with that. If you feel like you're generating enough charges, or you can just completely go without having charges at all to deal damage, feel free to spec out of this, grab some rare amulet, and that's totally fine. We are also using Original Sin for our ring. Now, this is a budget option in my opinion. I will be swapping out of this eventually, but the reason why I'm using Original Sin is because I'm using an elemental bow, which is much cheaper than the full physical bow. So you can use Original Sin or Plague Fingers, right? Either one works, to make sure you can use an elemental bow. But the problem with Original Sin is that we use a lot of uniques, and that's why you saw my resistances kind of lacking. Now, I could get resistance a little bit better here and use some of this lightning resistance and bring it over cold, and I would be completely fine. But at the same time, I think that it's just better to use not use Original Sin, because we can use this belt right here, Darkness Enthroned, which will allow us to have more ailment magnitude. So this is just really, really strong for our build. And as a result, if we take off our belt, we are going to start really lacking resistances. So that's why I would much rather have a rare ring here. then the rare belt, so we can use Darkness Enthroned. The other thing is, you can also use Hand of Wisdom action because you are using Original Sin. It's going to take us another hit on our resistances, but it is more damage, so feel free to use that as well. But this is the current setup we have right now. I'm going to be shifting over to a full fizz bow whenever I can. It's just more expensive, but it's going to be better because we're going to be able to use this. And then we're going to also be able to use a rare ring to help us out with resistances, and then just use our Darkness Enthroned. Boom, big damage, right? So that is the reason why we are going for our current setup, and our eventual setup will not be using the Original Sin, but rather just using the Darkness Enthroned belt and a rare ring instead, and a rare glove. So yeah, the rest of our equipment, it's just the usual energy shield, evasion, as much survivability as possible on here. Same here, energy shield, survivability, also fizz damage to attacks if you can, because again, we are going to be going full fizz. If you're not full fizz, you can feel free to not use this slot for energy shield. Just grab all flats on the top. Or again, you can use Hand of Wisdom action. For our boots, we're going to change it eventually, but it's overall same idea. Survivability and movement speed. So that's what you want for your belt. And then again, for our weapon, you're going to want to have either a full fizz bow, or if you're using Plague Fingers or Original Sin, you can go for an LE bow, which is just a lot cheaper. For our rune for our bow, we are using one Rune of Agony for extra chaos damage, and I'm using a Thraldana as well for plus poisons. I've just found that having the +1 to poison, while it does reduce the duration of our poisons, for mapping, it just feels a lot more comfortable than having two Thraldanas. Two agonies. Having two agonies will be better for single target damage, but I found, again, single target is perfectly fine the way it is, so I just use one of each. If you have 3 sockets in here with a corrupt, or 4 sockets, you can use 2 to 3 of these chaos damage ones, and then you can use this one Thraldana for the extra poison stack. But yeah, that's for it, mostly for our equipment. I am also running for our, when we're using our poison concoction, right? It swaps us over to our other weapon set, which has no weapon. You can use a shield or a focus on here. So if you wanted to use a focus, I don't really have any thing special. I was just like, I'm just gonna grab a focus just for demonstration, right? You can use this to increase the survivability, right? You can just get a lot of energy shield on here, or a shield with a lot of block, whatever you want. And then as a result, you can go and just be a little bit more survivable on the other end of things. So yeah, that's what we have the focus on there. You don't have to use it there if you don't want to. It's just what I have, just to kind of min-max, right? But yeah, that about wraps it up for our equipment. Now, before we close out the video, I did mention earlier that I wanted to show you guys a real example of me doing this on a boss, so you can see exactly how you perform the acidic concoction combo. Now, before we go into the boss, I'll just say again, you basically put down the vine arrows, right? Pretend that the boss is this pillar. You shoot it with the poison burst. Then you stand on top of the vine arrows, and we just lay it in on the acidic concoctions. That's basically how you do the combo, but not many people do a very good job of explaining how exactly it works, because basically everybody just says, stand on top of the vine arrows and just spam it. You don't need to worry about the boss. It just needs to be you on top of the vine arrow. Well, sometimes your vine arrow is like out here and the boss is right there, and you're spamming your concoction and it's hitting the vine arrow, but it's not hitting the boss. And that doesn't work either. A lot of people just say, oh, you're just using it on the vine arrow. It's not like that. You need to have the concoctions hit both the boss and the vine arrow. And I'll show you this in a Zesht. So in this first example, I will have the vine arrows attached to the boss. You see, and I activated them, right? They're green. So I'm gonna go behind the boss, drop my concoctions, right? I'm missing here, but yeah, you can see right here. When we throw the concoctions down, they are not dealing damage to the boss, right? So you can't do it with just having the vine arrows attached to the boss. But the opposite is also true. You cannot have it be attached and only hit the vine arrows. So you can see right here, we have the vine arrows attached. We hit it with the poisons, right? And we're standing here and we throw the concoction pretty much right on top of the vine arrows. And you can see the boss is not taking any damage. And I think it becomes a little bit more, even more apparent later, because the boss pushes the vine arrows back, right? and I stand here, do it again. Absolutely nothing's happening. You can see that the boss still has the Vine Arrow debuff on him, right? So you can't just stand on the Vine Arrow and spam it, and you can't do it just by being and spamming on the boss. You need to be throwing the concoctions and having them hit both the boss and the Vine Arrow at the same time in order for it to happen. You see right there, right? We are a little bit further away from the boss, but clearly because we are both still hitting the boss and the Vine Arrows, it is actually registering the damage. So there we go, guys. Hopefully that clears everything up, because I know a lot of people see this combo and like, I don't know how to do it. When I do it, it seems to do no damage. The reason why is because you're either A, only hitting the boss, or B, only hitting the Vine Arrow. You need to hit both in order for the damage to register. But yeah, that wraps up the video, guys. Hopefully y'all enjoyed the video. If you did, let me know down in the comment section below, as well as if you have any other questions. And also, the best way to support the channel and let me know that you enjoyed it is by hitting the sub button. It's completely free and it helps me out a ton. I also stream on twitch.tv/MeSoXshiru every single night. So hopefully I can see you guys there. But if not, hopefully I'll see y'all on the next video. All right, guys. Peace. You can't leave this. So I think you guys just rent cafe rooms. Yeah, but 3 dudes sleeping in a cafe room together, honestly, it would get me way too hot and bothered. Like, I don't know if I could, like, not have a boner the entire time. You know what I mean? That would just be a little awkward. You think this build can have you to Symbio 3? Probably. I mean, I could try it. Like, it's probably just, like, gearing-wise is, like, the only thing that's keeping me from, like, clearing it if I can't clear it now. Because, like, Symbio, one of the biggest problems with Symbio 3 is just the inability to, like... What is it called? Either A, you don't have enough AoE, or B, maybe you're running like an ailment build and like you're unable to like apply the ailments, which this build shouldn't have that issue at all. So it's just about survivability on my character, getting better gear. Will gearing help you with frenzy charges? Is that just dead? Yeah, it won't help with frenzy charges, unfortunately. The frenzy charge stuff is just... It's just dunzo. It's just... Yeah. Unfortunately, it's not possible to fix. From what I can tell. Like, a point... There is, like, you know... A point where gearing does help, right? You're doing too little damage and not breaking enough armor. But then... You know, I'm already past that point. Right now, it's just about getting enough damage to, like, deal enough, like, kill enemies without frenzy charges. That is, like, the goal right now. Or at least kill most enemies without frenzy charges. Saw a build like 50 minutes ago. I don't know, he was getting frenzy charged very well, but he did it. I mean, there's a possibility that they've just picked out like the best like clips, right?
No choice but to put you down.
And either that, or they were running Deadeye with Serpent's Egg. And if you do that, you should be getting some pretty good frenzy charges for sure. Well, this map was definitely not worth the 25x investment. I think I should just sell those omens. I don't think I have enough rarity on my gear to make use of it. Pork loin is bugged and will the same for combat frenzy. Buggy. You know, what the fuck is up with this guy's name? Yo, we got another Colomox invitation? What the heck? Is Shadow 81 still here? He is. Off to bed. See you tomorrow. All right, sounds good. See you tomorrow. How tempted was to choose a Deadeye ascendancy? Not tempted at all. This build is for Deadeye is not as good. This build is way better on what is it called? On Pathfinder. There's something really satisfying about a 360 attack. Tell Jaikon, fuck you too. I mean, I think Spiral Volley is a very satisfying skill. I just wish the frenzy charge stuff were a little bit better. Oh my god. All these bases are dropping. All these bases. I don't have room for all of them. I need to fix my loot filter. Can't have it just dinging everything. At least started playing Deadeye. The Treasure Generation was awful. Yeah, it's not great. But the thing is, like, it's about making the character strong enough to kill most things without frenzies. Colomox invitation. 135 max life. Increase energy recharge rate. Absolute trash. Max mana, shock duration, garbage. Build looks good, to be honest. Yeah, I mean we've taken it a long way, right? It's gone a long way. It used to be a lot worse, but it's just that if you played the build last league, right? It just ends up being like, yeah, this build is it's a husk of its former self, you know. But, you know, it's fine. It works. It's just that last league, you didn't have to invest that much money to make it feel good. Whereas this league, you just have to invest a lot more money to, like, make it operate. Dude, this little area is so small. Quick and lethal. I think I'm just going to buy this one. Oh, whoops. I don't have enough to defer that one. Awkward.